Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today, guys, it's just me and the microphone. I really wanted to dive into the real idiosyncrasies of running a consultation. It's one of the questions that I recently got in our Designer Meetup Facebook group. And I think it's a really good one because I think a lot of designers are always looking for ways to improve how they run a consultation to really maximize their time and, let's face it, get your client to sign on and work with you. So today's episode, I'm going to go through what I do to prepare for a consultation, give you a little bit of my thoughts on how I used to run my consultations, how I run them now, and some tips to help you convert that consultation into a full gig. So here we go.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
Okay, how to run an effective consultation. This is something that honestly I am continually striving to perfect. I definitely think that I've improved over the years. It's something that I've always kind of struggled with at the beginning. I mean, let's face it, going to somebody's house can be so super nerve-wracking, especially if you don't know them, they don't know you, and there's all kinds of unknowns. When I started working in interior design, I worked for a designer and he did not charge for his consultation. I realize now in hindsight, he was at a level that had a certain caliber of clientele that when somebody called him, it was probably more or less a done deal. It was a very different experience. But I didn't have that understanding. So when I went out on my own, when I went out on my own, people would call me. And honestly, let's face it, when someone calls you and you're just starting out running your business and maybe even a few years in, you're just so freaking excited that they even picked up the phone and called you over all the other people out there, over all the other designers in your town, in your city that have experience, they actually called you. And so then there's this excitement, there's these nerves, and then there's also this, for me, and I'm going to speak from my own experience, so if this isn't you, then, well, you're lucky. But there's always this kind of imposter syndrome for me. Shoot, oh my gosh, am I going to be good enough? Oh my God, they called me. I don't know oh my God. Oh no, can they afford design? Do they even know what things cost? I bet they can't afford me. And there was always for me this negative self-talk. And I'm not going to lie, there's still a little bit of it for me now, way less. But there was a little bit of that self-talk of, oh my God, I'm going to this person's house. I don't even know, what if they don't like the type of design that I do? I'll just have to play it safe. Oh my God, I did this for so long. I didn't take design risks. I just played it super safe because I wanted everyone to like it. But anyhow, sidebar, that's something else. So I got really nervous. They would call, I would be really excited. And I would say, yeah, okay. I've got some time tomorrow. I can swing by. That'd be great. They're like, oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, fantastic. Here's my address. I would write it down on a scrap piece of paper, maybe put it into a planner. And then I would show up at their house. I didn't charge any money. I didn't really have a plan. I would show up. Oh my God, I remember so many times walking up towards someone's front door and feeling so nervous. I had a notebook, of course, and knocking on the door and introducing myself, shaking their hand, and them being kind of waiting to see what's the process? How do we do this? And I had no clue. I would show up. Basically, I'd done the work. The prep for me was showing up, and I would show up and I'd be like, okay, so tell me what you want to do to your house. And they would ask me questions and I would try to come up with like the best solutions on the spot, which stressed me out because I realize now with my years of experience that I do not do my best work on the spot. I'm not one of those people that can walk into a house and just have the vision for what it's going to be. I really have to mull it over. I have to sleep on it. I have to work out in plan view. I have a process and my process is not like, boom, this is what you should do. This is the color you should paint it. Because I know there are designers out there like that. And if I were like that, I would love it. So if that's you, wow, you have I would say a leg up. So anyhow, so that's how my consultations used to go. And if anyone's listening and you're like, that's how my consultations go right now, it's okay. You're not alone. This is like the majority of designers, especially when you're starting out. And then what would happen is I would sometimes get the job. I would sometimes not. I mean, I had no process. So when they asked like how to charge, what I charged, I would say, I charge $150 an hour. Or I think back then it was like $100. First I started at $97. And then I bumped it to like $125 an hour. And I was like, I'm $125 an hour. And then I, of course, couldn't predict how much it was going to cost. I couldn't even give them ballpark construction numbers. They would say, well, we have about $10,000. Do you think that's enough to decorate our main floor? I'd be like, sure, we can make anything work. I'm calling BS on that because never has it been possible, even with IKEA. Like, shoot. And that was my consultation. Okay, full stop. That's no longer how I do it. It's taken a bit of a winding path to get to where I am today. As with anything, it's been a lot of trial and error, a lot of learning from others, business coaches especially. And I started to charge. I think I was working on a TV show with another designer and she had her own small business and had worked for another designer. And she's like, oh, I always charge for my consultation. And I was like, oh, really? But like, I mean, isn't there a lot of pressure? Like, what do you give them for that? I think she told me she charged like $400 or $250 or $400, something like that. And I was like in awe because I had more experience than this other designer did. And that's when it hit me. I was like, it hit me that I've not been really running my business as a business. And that's when I started to invest in coaching and doing all the things. But I remember that I had a lot of resistance to charging for my consultation. I mean, I'm not going to get into all the details about why you should charge because I firmly believe that as a professional, you should charge for your time if you are giving your professional advice. A lot of designers undervalue their worth and their expertise because it comes so naturally. And I think creatives in general do that. But I would argue that once I started charging for consultations, I was more likely for that consultation to turn into a job. So the first thing I really recommend you do is you find a fee and you charge it for your consultation. And that will look different depending on your experience level. It will look different depending on the city where you live. But I started out charging $450 for a consultation, which is up to 2 hours of my time. And I did that for a while, probably for a couple of years until I upped it to $500, I think. And then I was going to go up to, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but I was going to go up to $650, I think. And my husband was like, well, Rebecca, if you're going to go to $650, you may as well go to $750. And I remember this was like the end of a year. It was like Christmas was coming. And I was like, ooh, that's ballsy. $750. Come on. And I was like, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? People don't hire me. And then I reduce the fee again, right? So I just like slapped it up on the website. And guess what? People still hired me. And because I was charging a premium rate, less people hired me that didn't have the money to engage my services fully and completely. I converted more clients when I charged more for my consultation. The year before, I did twice as many consultations because I charged less money. And let's face it, $500 is a pretty sweet deal to get an interior designer to like validate all your decisions, right? Certainly will save you a lot of time and money down the road. So I noticed a big difference. So, okay, charge for your consultation. Here's what we do in-house to prepare. And you guys know I'm all about process. Power of Process is my course for designers. We will roll it out again. I'm not sure when, probably at the end of the year, maybe next year, but it's where I walk designers through the power of having a step-by-step way of doing things that you can repeat literally every time. So the consultation is the very first step in our process that's client-facing. And we have checklists. And if if you're in Power of Process, if you sign up for that course, you get access to all the checklists that I use for the entire duration of any project. But today, I'm just going to walk you through the checklist that we use for consultation. And I'm going to share a little freebie that you guys can download if you go to RebeccaHay.com/consultation checklist. So you guys can get this, but I'm just gonna walk you through what we do before the consultation to prepare, and then I'll share with you the actual way that I run through a consultation, and that's the checklist. So, first of all, we charge for the consultation. Second of all, I never say, okay, it's gonna be tomorrow. If I'm not available, how good must I be? If I'm seriously available, and that means I'm probably not in demand. There's something to be said for waiting for something. So I always tell anyone who reaches out to us, which is typically by email these days, I have somebody else in my office respond to those emails and book the consultation. But if you don't have access to like a virtual assistant or an assistant to help with that, you can just do it yourself. But what we do is we use something called Calendly, which is an app. I think there's a few different ones. There's another one called, can't remember the name of it. Anyhow, and they're basically appointment booking apps. Sorry, I'm just drinking my coffee before it gets cold. That's been a game changer because we used to go back and forth with email all the time trying to schedule. And to be honest, it was just a time suck. And you want to make sure that people who are inquiring for your services, like you do not miss their email, you do not miss their phone call, like you are on top of it. So we will schedule, if they reach out to us, we schedule what's called a discovery call. And then after the discovery call, if they want to book a consultation, then we send them the Calendly link and they can book it. And essentially the link gives them access to my calendar, but only the dates and times that I've made available. I have certain days of the week that I block off that are just for consultations so that I'm always in that mentally prepared state. They don't just pop up out of nowhere. I usually book them 2 weeks in advance. So now, sometimes more. I mean, if we're really busy, especially with pandemic and lockdowns, things have shifted and changed so much. But that's what we do. So the consultation is booked. We make sure we send them a document that tells them how to prepare for the consultation. I'm going to say something I say all the time. This is not brand new information. I'm not the first to say this. Get your pen and paper. Type it out. You have to set expectations early and often. You have to set expectations early and often. And I talk about this a lot in Power of Process, but the idea is that you have to let the client or potential client understand what to expect. What does it mean for you to come for a consultation? So we send them a little bit of a document that says, here's what to expect in the consultation. And it says things like, what does it say? Like eliminate distractions. Like if you have kids, like try and find a sitter or, because it can be distracting, not just for me, but also for you. We want to give you our full undivided attention. Or like if you have deliveries, try not to have deliveries, that type of thing. Try to keep the house come prepared with a list of questions. If you have a Pinterest board or inspiration, like we just have like a little checklist for that homeowner to be prepared so that when I come, they know what to expect. And it also explains to them the value I'm going to offer. So it says like Rebecca will offer design suggestions, troubleshoot, and can tackle like paint colors, layout, whatever you want within that time frame, which we say is up to 2 hours, right? So sometimes a consultation doesn't last a full 2 hours. That doesn't mean they get a refund on some of their money. It's $750 for me plus tax. Take it or leave it if I'm there for 45 minutes or I'm there for 2 hours. And so we let them know what to expect. It's a little pretty PDF that we've made. You could make it in Canva, send it to the client, send them a reminder. I didn't used to do this. And what would happen is we'd be like the day before, we get emails. Is the consultation still on for tomorrow? So that's also where I think it's key to have a calendar booking system, even if it's just you inviting them in your Google Calendar. Okay. Here's what you need to make sure you do. I think some of this goes without saying, but I'm just going to say it. Dress professionally. This is your opportunity to make a great first impression. I'm not saying you have to dress like somebody else. Let me be clear. To me, it is so important that you show up as your authentic self. You want to wear something that makes you feel confident, makes you look professional, but also look like you. I've done too many consultations in the past, too many client meetings where I was like, I need to put on boots with a heel, and I need to wear a blazer, and I need to, because I was trying to live up to this ideal standard that I saw as what was expected of an interior designer. I do not think that is necessary. I think I was dressing a part. It was like playing a part in a play. My friend Heather Haddon, I actually did an episode of this podcast with her. She's a real estate agent. It was so great. She talked about going through her divorce, and I don't know that number, but you guys should go back and listen to it. It's really good. But she talks about when she started out in real estate, how she felt like she was dressing for a part. She had like a tickle trunk, and she would open the tickle trunk and she'd pull out like the high heels and like the pencil skirt and the things that you would expect a realtor to look like when they showed up at your house. I think the world has changed, thankfully, for the better, especially for women. So make sure you show up professionally, but yourself. Also, review any notes before you get there. Like, this should go without saying. But if you've had a phone call with them and you've taken notes, or they sent an intake form, like, review the notes, review what they sent you so you don't show up. And you want to show up interested, right? You want to show them that you can listen. The consultation is so much about listening. Always show up early. Always. Sit in your car outside, walk around the block. Always be early. If you're not early, you're late. And then I bring all the things you would need. I bring a laser measure because I do overall room measurements when I'm there. I do not measure the whole house when I'm at a consultation. That is once they hire us, then I will do that detail, but I'll do overall measurements with my laser. I always have a measuring tape, though, because you always need one. You guys know that, to like show them, like, here's 5 feet. Here's what 4 feet looks like. Oh, this is kind of tight. This is whatever, 24 inches. I bring a camera to take pictures. Ideally, I try to bring a camera that's not my phone because it has a wider angle, but I don't always remember that. Graph paper, a ruler, and a scale. Sometimes you need that to sketch. Sometimes we record it. So if I bring an assistant with me to my consultation, which I've started to do lately, which has been, oh my God, a game changer. Honestly, it's so worth the 2 hours you pay someone, even if that person doesn't end up helping you with the job. Like, I don't know what it costs in your city to hire a junior or an intermediate designer, but having that other person there just to take the notes, oh my God. For the longest time, I would be walking around the house with my notebook, like I'm trying to listen, write down things that they say, and then I'm also trying to offer ideas, but make sure I write down what I offer, right? So I don't forget. It was like, oh my God, I ended up leaving. I had no notes. And I wanted to type up a consultation summary. I had to use my memory because you can't multitask. Bring someone who can take notes, even if it costs you like $25 an hour for 2 hours. That's $50. Up your consultation fee so you can pay for that person. It also is going to make you look so much more professional. So if you can bring someone, great. If you can't, make sure you take notes the best you can. Bring indoor shoes. This is a big one if you live in a cold climate. In a city where you never know if someone's going to want you to take your shoes off. I hate walking around barefoot in someone's house. So I always will bring a pair of indoor shoes, like a cute little pair of flats. I put them in my bag. Makes me look professional, like, oh, this isn't my first rodeo. So I'll do that. And then I also bring, this is something that I think is really handy, is I also bring with me a thank you card in an envelope. And what that is for me to do after. So after I leave the house, I'll sit in the car and write a thank you note. I'll either pop it in the mailbox at their house, or if I feel like they're going to see me creeping back up to their house, I'll put it in the mail. And then I have a leave behind folder. It's a branded folder. It's a navy folder with it's not even branded. That sounds so fancy. With like a Rebecca Hay Design sticker that goes on it. And inside that folder is a printout of all of the documentation that they've already been sent via email, but it's a printout of what it's like to work with us. So it talks about our fee breakdown and our process with pretty pictures. It's all like kind of mocked up in, you could do it on Canva. I think we've done it in InDesign. It just looks really nice. I have a business card in there. I have a copy of the contract, which I'll get to in a minute. And if there's anything else, I think that's all I have right now in it. There might be something else. I think I have something on sustainability. So I have like a whole pamphlet on where you can donate your things so it doesn't go to a landfill, because I'm really passionate about that. And I bring my paint fan deck. Okay, so that's the things you need to have with you in your little tote bag. I always had a bag that everything would just be in, so all I had to do was grab that. I had pre-created folders, so in a pinch, if I wasn't feeling that organized, it's already done. And then I show up at the house. Okay, without going into the second replay of a consultation, because I'm sure that's going to be super boring for some of you. Some of you might already do this, so you can just skip this episode. I show up, I introduce myself, and I take 5 minutes to just be friendly and chit-chat. It's so important before you dive into business that you show them your personality and that you connect on a personal level. So I'll look for something around the house, or, I might see, let's say, a hockey bag. Oh, do your kids play hockey? Oh yeah, they had this tournament. Oh wow, that's so crazy. Yeah, no, my son's only 6. So he can't really skate, let's be honest. So we're working on that, but we really love to go skiing as a family. Oh wow, that's really cool. Yeah, my sister is a member at such and such a club. And I might say, oh yeah, I've skied there, or I've heard it's wonderful, or it doesn't really matter. You guys are human beings. Show them you're a human being. Chit chat and try to find a commonality, because people will hire people based on a personal connection. We recently sent out a few end of project surveys to our clients, and it was really interesting. And one of the questions is, what of all these reasons, what are the reasons you hired us? And every single person, there was multiple reasons for each person, but every person had one common thread, and they all said personal connection with Rebecca. And it wasn't that they knew me from high school. It was that they felt a personal connection to me as a human. So I just want to say this is another opportunity for you to do that, to establish that trust, to start to build that relationship. Then, and like literally 5 minutes, like I don't spend a lot of time, but it is important to spend some time doing that. Then what I do is I like to take charge. You want to make sure that they understand that you're a professional. So I come, and a lot of times they're like, okay, well, I don't really know, like, where do you want to start? How do you want to do it? Like, they're excited that you're there, but they're kind of apprehensive. And so that's when I say, okay, so this is how I like to run a consultation. I'll preface it with something like that. I'm like, typically, like, we walk through the space, you show me everything that, I want to just hear from you. I'm just going to listen, hear from you. If ideas pop up, that's great. And we'll walk through, and then we'll start to troubleshoot some ideas. Let's just walk through room by room, because they probably are like, and then I say, after we've done that, then we'll sit down, we can look at any inspiration images, and I can walk you through a little bit more detail about our process at the end. How does that sound? And they're like, okay, great. Like, where do you want to start? Right? And I'm usually like, let's start right here, instead of let's go upstairs. So I say, let's start right here. And if I have brought somebody with me, I make sure to introduce them. I say, like, this is Ashley. She's my associate. She's going to be with us today taking some notes. And they're like, oh, hello, nice to meet you, la, 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 right? Okay, so we walk around the space. I listen, I ask questions, and I listen. There's so much to be said for that. I always offer ideas. They're paying me, and that's part of having a paid consultation, is that you can offer your ideas. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to hold back. I want to hold back until they hire me. And then I'm going to really, really show them the goods. I don't do that. I'm like, I will give you all my ideas. And I often will say, I'm just spitballing here. Once we get into AutoCAD, or once we really tackle the design, things might change. So don't hold me to it. But here's a thought, or here's an idea, because I have had in the past where I've said something in a consultation and it stuck in the client's head. We didn't end up doing that. And then when the thing was installed, they said, oh, Rebecca told me there was going to be like a pop out in front of the sink. Right. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we talked about that, but it wasn't even in your presentation. I didn't realize that was something that resonated with you. So you do have to be really careful about how you preface your suggestions. Because people are, they're people. So we walk through the space, talk about ideas. I have my laser. I might take some measurements. Typically I'm not. I'm just like really engaged with the client. answering their questions, looking at it, I might say, oh, well, that's interesting. And sometimes the client might say, well, is there anything else that you would recommend? Oh, such a loaded question, right? Because you're staring at their drapes and they're hideous and you don't want to offend them. You guys know what I'm talking about. That you have to tread lightly. I mean, I wish I was one of those blunt people who's like, those don't work, they have to go. That's not who I am. I'm very diplomatic. And so I will typically address, and I might say, well, have you thought of switching up the drapery? Because, I don't know, maybe something to work with the new design or what, if I'm hesitant, I don't really know, and I could see that there's things that aren't working, I'm not sure. What I might say is, listen, once we get into the design, there's probably a few things that could be done here with the window treatments, but let me see, once we get into the design, it really is comprehensive. So once we get rolling with it, then we can probably fine tune it and find there's diplomatic ways to answer anything. Okay. Where am I? So we're walking through, and then finally, once we've gone through the entire space, that's when I say, it's usually a good break. They're usually oh, let me get some water. Do you want water? Do you want coffee? I typically say no, thank you. I have my water bottle, but that's up to you. I definitely do not take coffee or tea off the bat because I do want to be very active walking through the space at the beginning, and then we can sit down. So usually after about an hour and a bit, that's when we would sit down. And I would say, okay, let me just, we're going to sit down in a second. Why don't you guys, take a water break. I'm just going to go through and just take a few measurements and photographs for my own reference to help me put together the proposal. And so they'll say, oh, okay. So they'll go to the bathroom and then I'll just zip through the space. Or if I have someone with me, they'll do that for me, right? So that helps. That's a time savings. They get more out of me. But we go through, we just do overall measurements, write it on a piece of paper so we can get general square footages. And then what we do is we go and we, I lost my train of thought. Square footages, right. Then we sit down. We find a comfortable place to sit down where everybody can be. I like tables, to be honest, better than a coffee table and a sofa, just because I always bring an iPad with me. Oh, this is something else I forgot to say. I bring an iPad with a little pitch deck, which I call the consultation pitch deck. It's a little slideshow, a little PowerPoint that just walks them through our process again, because I'm repeating myself in multiple formats, in multiple ways, so that there's no question about how we work and how we bill. So I have that with me, and I have that iPad. And first I ask them if they have anything ideas they want to share with me. And so we kind of can go through those at the table. I'll tell you though, I know designers are I don't know, people don't have Pinterest boards and they don't share anything with me. I'm trying to I have to guess what they like. Yes, that is your job. Unfortunately, sometimes clients have no clue what they like. Often they know what they don't like. So if that's the case and they don't have any inspiration boards, I say, don't worry about it. There's lots of time. And probably after today's meeting, it'll spark your imagination and you'll probably start thinking about things. That's wonderful. That's perfect. That's expected. Pull magazine clippings, get your Pinterest board together so that when we get rolling, we can review it again on trade day. Because that is usually what happens. You've got them thinking and their minds start to turn and turn and turn. And maybe you've said one thing that sparks something else in their head and then they're reminded that they love navy stripes. They think about it that night in the middle of the night. So there's lots of room for them to still give you their ideas. And if they still don't have ideas when they actually hire you, that's when you have to do your job and present them with images to see what they gravitate to, right? Which design style of these pictures do you like? And maybe you have a Pinterest board that's curated just to show clients to get some feedback. So we sit down, we look at some inspiration if there is any, talk about that. And then I say, okay, I want to walk you guys through my process. And we just pull up my iPad and I pull it up. I used to just walk them through verbally with my contract in front of me. But I will tell you, it was so much talking and them just staring at my face, which is there's nothing wrong with my face, but it was a lot of pressure. So now I have this pretty visual to support. It also kind of prompts me what to talk about. I go slide by slide. I walk them through our 7-step process. I showed them some before and afters. I show them some durings, progress pictures. And at the end, there are a couple client reviews. And it's a beautiful little presentation, probably takes 5 to 10 minutes to show them. They can ask me questions. It's interactive as I go through. And then at the end, I say, okay, I just want to walk you through what our contract proposal looks like. And I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to fill out. This is what I'm going to send to you later based on the scope that we've talked about. Because, right, as you're walking through the space, you're figuring out the scope of work. We want to do built-ins here maybe. Oh, we're not going to touch the powder room, what have you. And I say, I'll type up the notes from today. You'll have a consultation summary. I want you to look at that. And then I will send you this contract. And I walk them through any bullet points in the contract, such as design fees are due up front prior to, beginning, all the things that are in the contract. I walk them through because, again, you want to set their expectation early and often. The more I talk about our process, the more I talk about our fee structure, the more I talk about whatever's in my contract and how we work, the easier it's going to be once they hire me. That way too, if they have any objections to what's in that contract or to how I work, we can meet them head on in the consultation. So that's basically the structure, the overarching arch of my consultations, if you will. And I have a little checklist, and I'm going to share that with you guys if you go to RebeccaHay.com/consultation checklist. And it's just sort of walks through like how I break out my consultation and some questions that I ask the client. And it's just kind of a guide. And what I find is it's robust. You do a lot in that consultation, but there's less pressure because now I have a structure to how I run the meeting. And it's the same structure regardless of the client, regardless of the type of project. And then at the end, I'll obviously ask if they have any other questions. Usually they're like, oh, no, maybe I will. And I was like, listen, I'm going to type all this up and I'll have a proposal to you by end of day. And you have to tell them a time, whatever it might be for you, end of day tomorrow, end of Friday. And then you have to deliver if that's how you do it. I used to just give them a price there on the spot. I don't do that anymore. But that was also a very effective way to do it. And I always like to remind them that, the world things are changing all the time. I like to talk about what's happening. Like right now, as I record this, we're still in lockdown in Toronto. It's still a pandemic. And I like to remind them, I talk about timelines. I'll talk about budget if that's something that's important. And I do say, we're taking on new projects starting August. We're taking on new projects starting January, whatever it is, just to set their expectation so they don't think if they hire me, boom, I'm going to hit the ground running on Monday. If you're able to hit the ground running on Monday, great. But I think it's helpful to let them know that before they get really excited. And again, I would say that in the phone call before they even scheduled the consultation. Okay. Whew. So that is the consultation. When I am done, okay, so here, actually, I had a question from one of our members in the Designer Meetup Facebook group who asked about converting at the consultation. How do you, I'm going to pull up the question, actually. Give me a second here. Oh, my goodness, 1 second. Charging your worth. I talked about that. Okay. So where's the question? Bummer. Okay. The question was somewhere along the lines of, how do you get your client to sign on in a consultation? And I just walked you through how I do a consultation, but what I will say is the way you get your client to sign on is by expressing to them the value that you bring. So for me, a huge part of that, because my process is the cornerstone of my business, I walk them through our super organized 7-step process. I share with them in the slide deck, visuals of magazines we've been published in. I share with them client testimonials. I'm adding that value so they can see what they get when they hire me. It's not just about really good ideas. Because a lot of us, when put on the spot, struggle to come up with the best solution for a kitchen layout. I know I do. Doesn't mean I can't come up with the best solution. It just might take me a little bit of time. So you want to show them whether it's proof of concept through client testimonials, images from your portfolio, publications, whatever you have. Or if you don't have that, then you have to reassure them based on other things. So based on projects that you maybe are in the middle of working on and what you're doing. I show examples of a sort of a couple projects in that slideshow that I showed them on my iPad. I show them, this is the kitchen, and I show the before, and I give a description of the family, and it didn't function for them, and they wanted to entertain, and these were the things that they were looking for. And then I show them the rendering. I show them the floor plan so that they can understand this is the type of work you can expect from us. You can expect to receive millwork drawings like this. You can expect to receive a reflected ceiling plan like this. You can expect to receive a rendering like this, and then I show the final end product. And so it walks them through from beginning to end. And I think when they can see that you have a process and a set way of doing things, even if you haven't been featured in a magazine or done it a million times, but when they can see, oh, this is what you're going to give me. This is exactly what a drawing looks like. Oh, cool. This is what it looks like mid-construction when the walls are down. Whatever it is, to reassure them that you know what you're doing. I often like to talk as well about construction, how messy it can be, how brutal. I do. Like, I kind of scare people, but I would rather that so that they understand I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. So I think adding your value and expressing that to the client in multiple ways repeatedly without being someone who toots their own horn, because there's a fine line there, is what will convert. The other thing that will convert is if you have that pre-qualifying call before you go to their house. You need to understand if you're the right fit from just a conversation and also from a budget standpoint. If they only have $10,000 to decorate their whole house and you don't know until you show up at their house, well, that kind of sucks, because then you have to be the one to tell them after they've already paid your consultation fee, I can't do it for $10,000. Not only can I not do it, like, you can't even afford my fee. I've been there. I've done a consultation where I didn't tell them ahead of time how I structured my fees. And they were really disappointed that they could not afford me, that they wish they had known before they forked over at the time, I don't know, $450 for the consultation. So these are things I think the more you can educate people early, the easier it will be when they actually hire you for that consultation to convert them to a real client. Okay. Whew. I don't know. Was that helpful? That's what I do. I mean, you just have to continually talk about your process, share the value, show up. My God, show up as yourself. Be your authentic self, who you are. Be professional. Listen, and take those little extra steps, like sending that little thank you card in the mail after the consultation. Even if they don't hire you, they might put it on their mantle and someone else might see it. Or they might say, I met with this lovely designer. It wasn't the right fit, but she even sent a thank you card. You should check her out. You just never know. Let me know on Instagram. Send me a DM. Like, how are your consultations going? Did you get any takeaways from this episode? Maybe you have another idea of how to run a consultation. I'm super open to learning, so let me know. And if you haven't already, can you guys leave me a review for this podcast? Because I feel like this podcast adds so much value. All of the guests that are here are so open, and I know I share it all with you. It would be really wonderful if you could give us a 5-star review so that others who don't know who we are can find us. I think that's how the algorithm works anyways. Okay, that's it, guys. Have a great day.